The plane touched down at Atlanta's airport just after 9 in the evening. Diana Williams stretched her tired legs and grabbed her small carry-on bag from the overhead compartment. She had been traveling for nearly 12 hours, flying back from a business conference in California, where she had just signed a major deal to expand her hotel chain into 3 new cities. Most people on the plane were dressed in business suits or fancy clothes, but Diana wore simple blue jeans, white sneakers, and a comfortable gray sweater. Her curly hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she carried a worn leather purse that had been with her since her college days. After spending 3 days in uncomfortable heels and formal dresses, she just wanted to feel like herself again. She walked through the airport. Diana thought about her journey. 15 years ago, she had been a single mother working 2 jobs just to pay rent. She cleaned hotel rooms during the day and studied business at night. Back then, she could never have imagined that she would one day own a chain of luxury hotels across the country. Her first hotel had been a small, rundown building that nobody else wanted to buy. Diana had used every penny of her savings and taken out loans that scared her to sleep at night. She painted walls herself, learned how to fix broken pipes, and worked at the front desk for 16 hours a day. Slowly, very slowly, she turned that little hotel into something special. Now, 18 years later, Diana owned 12 hotels in major cities. Her company, Grandview Hotels, was known for excellent service and beautiful rooms. Business magazines wrote articles about her success story, and she often spoke at conferences to inspire other entrepreneurs. But Diana never forgot where she came from. She still remembered what it felt like to be looked down on, to have people assume she couldn't afford nice things just because of how she looked or dressed. That's why she made it a point to visit her hotels unannounced, dressed like a regular person. She wanted to see how her staff really treated guests. Tonight, she was planning to visit her newest hotel in downtown Atlanta. The Grandview Atlanta had opened just 6 months ago, and Diana wanted to see how things were running. She had received a few complaints from guests about rude service, but her general manager always insisted everything was fine. Diana believed in seeing things with her own eyes. The taxi dropped her off in front of the hotel at 10:30. The building was beautiful, with tall glass windows and elegant lighting that made it glow against the night sky. A doorman in a crisp uniform stood at the entrance, and expensive cars lined the circular driveway. Diana felt a surge of pride looking at what she had built. She walked through the revolving door into the lobby, and her breath caught for a moment. The space was stunning. Marble floors reflected the light from crystal chandeliers, and fresh flowers filled large vases near comfortable seating areas. Soft jazz music played in the background, and well-dressed guests moved quietly through the space. Diana approached the front desk, where a young man in his early 20s was typing on a computer. His name tag read Tyler. He had perfectly styled hair and wore a suit that probably cost more than some people made in a month. When he looked up at Diana, his expression changed immediately. Tyler's eyes moved from her sneakers to her jeans, to her messy hair. His friendly smile disappeared, replaced by a look that Diana knew all too well. It was the look that said, "You don't belong here. Can I help you?" Tyler asked, his voice already different from the warm tone she had heard him use with the couple ahead of her in line. "Yes, I'd like to book a room for tonight," Diana said pleasantly. "Preferably the penthouse suite if it's available." Tyler actually laughed. Not a friendly laugh, but a laugh that made Diana's stomach tighten. "The penthouse suite?" he repeated, looking her up and down again. "Ma'am, that suite costs $1,500 a night." Diana kept her voice calm. "That's fine. I'd like to book it, please." Tyler shook his head and clicked his tongue. "Look, I'm trying to help you here. Maybe you didn't realize what kind of place this is. We have a budget hotel about 10 minutes down the road that might be more suitable for your needs." Other guests in the lobby were starting to notice the conversation. Diana could feel their eyes on her, and she saw one woman nudge her husband and point in their direction. "I understand what kind of place this is," Diana said, keeping her voice steady. "I'd like to book the penthouse suite. Here's my credit card." She pulled out a black American Express card and placed it on the marble counter. Tyler looked at it like it might bite him. "Ma'am, I need to see some identification too," he said, though Diana noticed he hadn't asked for ID from the previous guests. Diana handed over her driver's license. Tyler looked at it, then at her, then back at the license. His frown deepened. "This says Diana Williams," he said suspiciously. "That's correct. And you're telling me you can afford our penthouse suite?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Diana felt heat rising in her cheeks, but she had learned long ago that losing her temper never solved anything. "I believe my credit card and identification should be sufficient," she said calmly. Tyler held up one finger. "Just a moment," he said, and walked away from the desk. Diana watched him approach an older woman in a business suit who was standing near the concierge desk. They whispered together, both looking back at Diana several times. The woman, who appeared to be a manager, walked over to the front desk. Her name tag read, "Rebecca, Assistant Manager." "Good evening," Rebecca said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Tyler tells me you're interested in our penthouse suite?" "That's right," Diana replied. Rebecca looked at Diana's casual clothes and seemed to choose her words carefully. "Our penthouse suite is really designed for our VIP guests. Corporate executives, celebrities, that sort of clientele. Perhaps I could interest you in one of our standard rooms. They're quite nice and much more reasonably priced." Diana felt like she was watching a movie of her own life from 15 years ago, when she couldn't afford to stay in places like this. But now she could buy this entire hotel if she wanted to. "I specifically requested the penthouse suite," Diana said. "Is there a particular reason why I can't book it?" Rebecca and Tyler exchanged glances. "Well," Rebecca said slowly, "we do have certain standards we need to maintain for our premium accommodations." The words hit Diana like a slap. She knew exactly what Rebecca meant, even though she was trying to say it politely. Diana looked around the lobby at the other guests. All of them were well-dressed, and most of them were white. She was clearly being judged not just by her clothes, but by the color of her skin. Diana had two choices. She could tell them who she was right now and watch them scramble to apologize, or she could see exactly how far they would take this discrimination. She chose to wait. Diana stood at the front desk waiting for Rebecca's response. The assistant manager was clearly uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other while Tyler watched with barely hidden smugness. "Perhaps you could explain these standards to me," Diana said quietly. "I'm curious what qualifications someone needs to book a hotel room." Rebecca's face flushed slightly. "Well, it's not exactly qualifications. It's more about ensuring our guests feel comfortable in an appropriate environment." "And you don't think I would feel comfortable here?" "I'm sure you would," Rebecca said, quickly. "But our other guests expect a certain atmosphere." Diana looked around the lobby again. A businessman in an expensive suit was talking loudly on his phone about stock prices. A woman in designer clothes was complaining to her husband about the temperature. An elderly couple was arguing about their dinner reservation. None of them seemed particularly classy to Diana, but they all had one thing in common that she didn't. "I see," Diana said. "And what exactly about me makes you think I would disturb this atmosphere?" Tyler couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Look, lady, this isn't personal. We just know our clientele, okay? This place costs serious money. Like, serious money. Maybe you saw it in a movie or something and thought it would be cool to stay here, but this isn't the kind of place where people pay with credit cards that might get declined." Diana felt her anger rising, but she kept her voice level. "My credit card won't be declined." "Uh-huh," Tyler said with a smirk. "That's what everyone says." Rebecca shot Tyler a warning look, clearly realizing he was being too obvious. "What Tyler means is that we've had some issues with fraudulent cards recently. For our premium suites, we require additional verification." "What kind of verification?" Diana asked. "Bank statements, proof of income, references from other luxury hotels," Rebecca said, clearly making up rules as she went along. Diana almost laughed. In all her years of traveling, staying at the finest hotels around the world, she had never been asked for bank statements to book a room. "I notice you didn't ask the gentleman ahead of me for any of those things," Diana observed. Mr. Henderson is a regular guest, Tyler said quickly. How do you know I'm not a regular guest? Tyler looked her up and down again with obvious disdain. Trust me, I'd remember you. The comment was clearly meant to be insulting, and it worked. Diana felt the sting of his words, but she also felt something else. Determination. She was going to see exactly how far they would push this. I'd like to speak with your general manager, Diana said calmly. Rebecca and Tyler exchanged nervous glances. The general manager isn't available right now, Rebecca said. Then I'll wait. Ma'am, that really isn't necessary. Why don't you let me help you find somewhere more suitable? There's a Holiday Inn about 15 minutes away, or if you're looking for something really budget-friendly, there's a motel. I don't want a Holiday Inn or a motel, Diana interrupted. I want to stay here, in the penthouse suite, tonight. Tyler's patience finally snapped. Okay, look, I'm trying to be nice here, but you're clearly not getting the message. This hotel costs more in one night than most people make in a week. The penthouse suite costs more than most people make in a month. You're dressed like you're going to clean the rooms, not stay in them. A few other guests had stopped what they were doing to watch the scene unfold. Diana could hear whispered comments and see people pulling out their phones. In today's world, everything was recorded, and Diana realized this conversation was probably already being filmed. Are you refusing to provide me service because of how I'm dressed? Diana asked, making sure her voice was loud enough for the cameras to pick up. I'm refusing to provide you service because you clearly can't afford it, Tyler shot back. And honestly, this is a respectable establishment. We can't have people who look like you, hanging around the lobby. It makes our real guests uncomfortable. Diana's heart was pounding, but she kept her expression calm. And how exactly do I look? Tyler opened his mouth to respond, then seemed to realize he was about to say something he couldn't take back. Rebecca quickly stepped in. What Tyler means is that we have a dress code for our public areas. Guests are expected to maintain a certain standard of appearance. I see, Diana said. And this dress code is written down somewhere? It's an unwritten policy, Rebecca stammered. How convenient, Diana replied. An unwritten policy that you can apply however you choose. By now, a small crowd had gathered. Diana could see hotel employees peeking out from behind the concierge desk and the restaurant entrance. Everyone was watching to see what would happen next. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave, Tyler said loudly. If you don't have business here, you can't just hang around the lobby. I do have business here. I'm trying to book a room, and we've explained that we don't have anything available for you. Diana pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. She turned the screen toward Tyler and Rebecca, showing a balance that made both of their eyes widen. Still think I can't afford it? She asked quietly. Tyler stared at the screen for a moment, then his face hardened. Anyone can fake a bank app, he said dismissively. For all I know, you downloaded some fake banking app to try to scam hotels. It was such an outrageous accusation that Diana actually smiled. You think I'm running some kind of elaborate scam? To, what? Sleep in an expensive hotel room for one night? I've seen crazier things, Tyler said defensively. Rebecca was looking increasingly nervous. Tyler, maybe we should… No, Tyler interrupted. I'm tired of dealing with this. Ma'am, you need to leave now, or I'm calling security. On what grounds? Diana asked. Trespassing. You're not a guest, you're not staying here, and you're disrupting our other guests. Diana looked around at the other guests who were all watching the scene with fascination rather than annoyance. They seemed more entertained than disrupted. That's it, Tyler said, reaching for the phone. I'm calling security. Diana watched him dial, knowing that she was about to be asked to leave her own hotel by her own security guard. Part of her wanted to end this charade right now, but another part of her needed to see how far her own employees would go. The security guard who appeared was a middle-aged man with kind eyes who looked uncomfortable the moment he saw what was happening. His name tag read, Robert. What's the situation? Robert asked quietly. This woman is refusing to leave, Tyler said dramatically. She's been harassing us, claiming she can afford the penthouse suite, and now she's just loitering in the lobby. Robert looked at Diana, then at the small crowd that had gathered. then at the phones pointed in their direction. "Ma'am, is there a problem here?" "I'm trying to book a room," Diana said simply. "These employees are refusing to serve me." Robert looked confused. "Is there a particular reason why?" Tyler jumped in before Rebecca could stop him. "Look at her, Robert. Does she look like she belongs in a place like this? We have standards to maintain." Robert's expression changed immediately. Diana could see that he understood exactly what was happening, and he didn't like it one bit. "Sir," Robert said to Tyler, I think maybe you should do your job and escort this woman out of here." Tyler interrupted. Robert looked at Diana again, and she could see the conflict in his eyes. He knew this was wrong, but Tyler was his supervisor's boss and jobs weren't easy to find. "Ma'am," Robert said quietly, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Diana nodded slowly. She had seen enough. Her own employees in her own hotel were throwing her out because of how she looked. "Of course," she said calmly. "But first, I'd like to speak with whoever is in charge of this establishment." Robert shifted uncomfortably from one foot to the other. Diana could see the internal struggle playing out on his face. He clearly knew what was happening was wrong, but he also had a job to protect. "Ma'am, the general manager isn't available right now," Robert said quietly, his voice much gentler than Tyler's had been. "Then I'll speak with whoever is available," Diana replied calmly. Tyler rolled his eyes dramatically. "This is ridiculous. Robert, just escort her out. She's wasting everyone's time." But Robert didn't move. Instead, he looked around the lobby, at the growing crowd of guests and employees. Diana could see more staff members gathering near the elevators and behind the restaurant entrance. Word was spreading quickly through the hotel that something was happening in the lobby. "Maybe we should get Ms. Chen," Robert suggested to Rebecca. Rebecca's face went pale. "Ms. Chen is in her office doing inventory. We don't need to bother her with this." Diana raised an eyebrow. Ms. Chen was obviously someone with more authority than Rebecca or Tyler, and Rebecca clearly didn't want her involved. "I think Ms. Chen should be involved," Diana said firmly. "I'm requesting to speak with management about the treatment I've received here tonight." "You haven't received any treatment," Tyler snapped. "We just told you we don't have any rooms available for you." "That's interesting," Diana said, pulling out her phone. "Because according to your hotel's website, you have 17 rooms available tonight, including the penthouse suite." She held up her phone, showing the booking page with real-time availability. Tyler's face flushed red. "The website isn't always accurate," he said weakly. "It was updated 3 minutes ago," Diana replied, checking the timestamp. By now, at least a dozen people were watching the scene unfold. Diana could see phones recording from multiple angles. She knew that by tomorrow morning, this entire interaction would probably be all over social media. One of the guests, an elderly woman with silver hair, stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said to Tyler, "but I couldn't help overhearing. Are you really refusing to let this young lady book a room?" Tyler straightened up, clearly uncomfortable with the direct question. "Ma'am, this is a private matter between us and her." "It doesn't seem very private," the woman replied, gesturing to the crowd that had gathered. "And it certainly doesn't seem right." "Mrs. Patterson, please," Rebecca said quickly. "We have everything under control." Mrs. Patterson ignored Rebecca and spoke directly to Diana. "Dear, I've been staying at hotels for 70 years and I've never seen anything like this. You have every right to book a room here." "Thank you," Diana said warmly. She was touched by the stranger's support. Tyler looked panicked. Mrs. Patterson was clearly someone important, probably a regular guest whose opinion mattered. "Mrs. Patterson, I assure you this is just a misunderstanding about payment verification," Tyler said, his voice suddenly much more polite. "Payment verification?" Mrs. Patterson repeated. "Young man, you didn't verify my payment when I checked in yesterday. You simply ran my card and gave me my key." Tyler had no response to that. Diana decided to push a little harder. "I'd like to file a formal complaint about the service I've received here tonight. I assume you have a process for that?" Rebecca looked like she wanted to disappear into the marble floor. Ma'am, I really think you're making too big a deal out of this. Maybe we can work something out. What kind of something? Diana asked. Well, we do have a standard room available. Not the penthouse, but it's nice, and I could give you a discount for the confusion. Diana almost smiled. Now that other guests were involved and phones were recording, Rebecca was suddenly eager to find a room. A discount for the confusion, Diana repeated. What kind of confusion was that exactly? Rebecca struggled to find words that wouldn't sound discriminatory on camera. Just miscommunication about availability. I see. And this miscommunication had nothing to do with how I look or how I'm dressed? Of course not, Rebecca said quickly, but her voice lacked conviction. Diana looked around the lobby. So if I came back tomorrow night dressed exactly the same way, I would be welcomed as a guest? Tyler couldn't help himself. Look, there's nothing wrong with expecting people to dress appropriately when they're in a nice place. And what exactly is inappropriate? About how I'm dressed? Diana asked. Tyler gestured vaguely at her outfit. You're wearing jeans and sneakers. This is a 5-star hotel. I see. And is there a written dress code for guests? It's common sense, Tyler said. Common sense, Diana repeated. Interesting. Just then, Diana noticed a woman in a business suit approaching from across the lobby. She was tall, with short blonde hair, and she moved with the confidence of someone in charge. This had to be Ms. Chen. The woman reached the front desk and immediately assessed the situation. Diana could see her taking in the crowd, the phones, and the tense body language of her employees. What's going on here? Ms. Chen asked, her voice carrying authority. Rebecca jumped to answer. Ms. Chen, this is just a small misunderstanding about room availability. Ms. Chen looked at Diana, then at Tyler and Rebecca, then at the crowd of onlookers. Her expression suggested she knew this was more than a misunderstanding about room availability. I'm Linda Chen, the general manager, she said to Diana. What seems to be the problem? Diana was impressed by Ms. Chen's direct approach. I've been trying to book the penthouse suite for tonight. Your staff has been very creative in explaining why that's not possible. Ms. Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. What do you mean by creative? Well, first I was told I couldn't afford it. Then I was told it was reserved for distinguished clientele. Then I was told I needed bank statements and references. Then I was told the website was wrong about availability. Then I was told there was an unwritten dress code. Ms. Chen's face was getting darker with each item Diana listed. I see. And what reason are they giving you now? Now they're offering me a discount on a standard room for the confusion. Ms. Chen turned to Tyler and Rebecca. Is this accurate? Rebecca started to speak, but Tyler interrupted. Ms. Chen, we were just trying to maintain our standards. This woman came in dressed like a vagrant and demanded our most expensive suite. We have to be careful about who we let stay here. Diana watched Ms. Chen's face carefully. This was the moment of truth. Would the general manager support her employees' discrimination, or would she do the right thing? Ms. Chen was quiet for a long moment, looking back and forth between Diana and Tyler. Finally, she spoke. Tyler, please step away from the desk. Rebecca, you too. Both employees looked shocked. Ms. Chen, we were just... Rebecca started. Step away from the desk. Now. Tyler and Rebecca moved aside, both looking confused and worried. Ms. Chen turned back to Diana. Ma'am, I sincerely apologize for the treatment you've received here tonight. This is absolutely not how we operate at Grandview Hotels. Diana felt a flicker of something, pride maybe, or relief, that at least one of her employees was doing the right thing. I'd like to personally handle your check-in, Ms. Chen continued. The penthouse suite is available, and I'd like to offer it to you at no charge as an apology for this inexcusable behavior. Tyler's mouth fell open. Ms. Chen, you can't just... I can and I will, Ms. Chen said firmly. And Tyler, we'll be having a conversation in my office first thing tomorrow morning. Diana looked around the lobby. The crowd was still watching, phones still recording. Mrs. Patterson was smiling and nodding approvingly. Robert, the security guard, looked relieved. But Diana wasn't ready to end this yet. She had seen how her employees really behaved when they thought no one important was watching. Ms. Chen was doing the right thing now, but what about tomorrow when Diana wasn't here? I appreciate the offer, Diana said carefully. But I think there's a bigger conversation we need to have about what happened here tonight. Ms. Chen nodded seriously. You're absolutely right. Would you be willing to discuss this privately in my office? Diana looked around the lobby one more time. At Tyler, who still looked defiant. At Rebecca, who looked scared. At Robert, who looked ashamed. At the guests who had witnessed everything. Yes, she said finally. I think that would be appropriate. But as they walked toward the elevator, Diana caught something that made her pause. Tyler was whispering angrily to Rebecca, and she caught just enough of his words to understand that he thought this whole thing was unfair to him. He still didn't get it. Even after everything that had happened, Tyler still thought he was the victim in this situation. Diana realized that offering her a free room wasn't going to solve the real problem. Something more needed to happen here. As Diana and Ms. Chen walked toward the elevator, Diana could hear Tyler's angry whispers behind them. This is ridiculous, he was saying to Rebecca. Chen's going to get us all in trouble with corporate over some woman who probably can't even afford a regular room, let alone the penthouse. Diana stopped walking. She turned around slowly and looked at Tyler, who immediately went quiet when he realized she had heard him. Excuse me, Diana said, her voice carrying across the lobby. Did you say something about corporate? Tyler's face flushed, but his defiance was still there. I just said that Ms. Chen is making a mistake that corporate isn't going to like. And why wouldn't corporate like ensuring that all guests are treated with respect? Tyler looked around at the crowd that was still watching. The phones were still recording. He seemed to realize that he was digging himself into a deeper hole, but he couldn't stop himself. Because corporate cares about protecting our reputation and our real customers, he said. They don't want us giving away penthouse suites to people who are just going to cause problems. Ms. Chen stepped forward, her face dark with anger. Tyler, that's enough. Report to my office immediately. But Diana held up her hand. Actually, Ms. Chen, I think Tyler should finish explaining his thoughts about corporate policy. Ms. Chen looked confused, but she stepped back. Diana walked closer to Tyler, her voice calm but carrying clearly across the lobby. So you think corporate wouldn't want me staying here? Look, lady, I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not playing a game, Diana interrupted. I'm asking a simple question. You seem very confident about what corporate wants. Tell me more about that. Tyler looked to Rebecca for support, but Rebecca was staring at her shoes. He looked to Ms. Chen, who was watching with a mix of anger and confusion. I just know that corporate expects us to maintain standards, Tyler said, but his voice was less certain now. What kind of standards? You know, keeping the right kind of clientele. And what makes someone the right kind of clientele? Tyler was trapped, and he knew it. Anything he said now was going to sound discriminatory, especially with all those phones recording. But he was too proud to back down. People who fit in, he said finally. And I don't fit in? Obviously not. The lobby had gone completely silent. Even the background music seemed quieter. Everyone was watching this conversation unfold. Diana nodded slowly. I see. And you're confident that if corporate knew about this conversation, they would support your position? I'm confident that corporate doesn't want us bending over backwards for people who clearly don't belong here. That was when Diana heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see a man in an expensive suit approaching quickly from the elevator bank. He was tall, with graying hair and worried eyes. Ms. Chen, he called out as he approached. I just got your text about a situation in the lobby. What's going on here? Ms. Chen looked surprised. Mr. Rodriguez, I didn't send you any text. The man looked confused. Someone from the hotel sent me a message saying there was an emergency that required my immediate attention. He pulled out his phone and showed it to Ms. Chen. Diana realized what must have happened. Someone in the crowd had recognized what was happening and contacted corporate directly. In today's connected world, videos of discrimination could go viral within hours, and companies had learned to respond quickly. I'm Carlos Rodriguez, the regional director for Grandview Hotels, the man said to Diana. I understand there's been some kind of problem? Diana looked at Tyler, whose face had gone completely white. Then she looked at Rebecca, who appeared to be having trouble breathing. Then she looked at Ms. Chen, who was clearly trying to figure out how this situation had escalated so quickly. "There has been a problem," Diana said calmly. "Your employees have been very educational about your company's policies." Mr. Rodriguez looked around the lobby, taking in the crowd, the phones, and the tense atmosphere. "What kind of educational?" "Well, Tyler here has explained that your company has standards about who the right kind of clientele is. He's been very clear that I don't fit those standards." Mr. Rodriguez's face darkened as he looked at Tyler. "Is this true?" Tyler opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. "Sir, I was just trying to maintain the reputation of the hotel. We have to be careful about who we let stay here." "Careful about what exactly?" Tyler looked around desperately. The crowd was larger now, and more employees had gathered to watch. "You know, making sure our guests are legitimate." "And what made you think this guest wasn't legitimate?" Tyler's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He couldn't say what he really meant without admitting to discrimination. Diana decided to help him out. "He said I looked like a vagrant. He said I was dressed like someone who cleans rooms rather than stays in them. He said people who look like me make the real guests uncomfortable." Mr. Rodriguez turned to Tyler with an expression of complete disbelief. "You said what?" I was just... She came in here dressed in jeans. And what?" Tyler couldn't finish the sentence. He knew that anything else he said would only make things worse. Mr. Rodriguez turned to Diana. "Ma'am, I cannot begin to express how sorry I am about the treatment you've received here tonight. This is absolutely not how Grandview Hotels operates, and I can assure you that there will be immediate consequences for this behavior." Diana nodded. "I appreciate that, Mr. Rodriguez, but I'm curious about something." "What's that?" "Tyler seems very confident that corporate would support his actions. He's mentioned corporate policy several times. I'm wondering if there's some training or guidance that led him to believe discrimination was acceptable." Mr. Rodriguez looked horrified. "Absolutely not. Our company has strict policies against discrimination of any kind. We provide extensive training on diversity and inclusion. What happened here tonight goes against everything we stand for." "I'm glad to hear that," Diana said, "because I'd hate to think that this was representative of your company's values." "It absolutely is not," Mr. Rodriguez said firmly. He turned to Tyler and Rebecca. "Both of you need to come with me right now. Ms. Chen, please ensure this guest receives our finest service and anything she needs." Tyler looked panicked. "Mr. Rodriguez, I think you're overreacting. I was just trying to protect the hotel's interests." "By discriminating against a potential guest?" "I wasn't discriminating, I was just being realistic about who can afford to stay here." "Based on what criteria?" Tyler's voice got smaller. "Based on how she looked." "And how exactly did she look that made you think she couldn't afford our rooms?" Tyler couldn't answer. Everyone in the lobby knew what he meant, but he couldn't say it out loud. Mr. Rodriguez turned back to Diana. "Ma'am, I'd like to offer you not just the penthouse suite, but our full VIP treatment. Complimentary meals, spa services, anything you'd like during your stay." Diana smiled. "That's very generous, Mr. Rodriguez, but I think there might be something else we should discuss first." "What's that?" Diana reached into her purse and pulled out her business card. She handed it to Mr. Rodriguez and watched his face as he read it. The color drained from his face completely. His mouth fell open. He looked from the card to Diana and back to the card. "Oh my God," he whispered. Ms. Chen stepped closer, trying to see what was on the card. When Mr. Rodriguez showed it to her, her face went just as white as his. Tyler and Rebecca moved closer too, and when they saw the card, Rebecca actually gasped out loud. The card was simple and elegant. It read, "Diana Williams, Chief Executive Officer, Grandview Hotels." The lobby went completely silent. Even the background music seemed to stop. Diana looked around at all the faces staring at her, at Tyler, who looked like he might faint, At Rebecca, who was shaking. At Miss Chen, who was clearly trying to process what had just happened. At Mr. Rodriguez, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Now, Diana said calmly, I think we really do need to have that conversation about corporate policy. The silence in the lobby stretched on for what felt like forever. Diana could hear her own heartbeat in her ears as she watched the realization spread across everyone's faces. Tyler was the first to speak, his voice barely a whisper. You're the owner? I am, Diana said simply. Tyler's legs seemed to give out and he grabbed the edge of the front desk to steady himself. Rebecca had tears in her eyes. Mr. Rodriguez looked like he was going through every stage of grief at once. Ms. Chen was the first to recover her composure. Ms. Williams, I had no idea you were planning to visit tonight. If you had known, would Tyler and Rebecca have treated me differently? Diana asked. Ms. Chen opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. They both knew the answer to that question. Diana looked around the lobby at all the faces watching her. Guests, employees, everyone was hanging on every word. I think, Diana said, we need to have a conversation with all the staff. Right now. Mr. Rodriguez nodded quickly. Of course, Ms. Williams, whatever you need. Ms. Chen, please gather everyone who's working tonight. Front desk, housekeeping, security, restaurant staff, everyone. Ms. Chen hurried away to collect the staff, and within 10 minutes, about 30 employees had gathered in the lobby. Some looked curious, others looked worried, and a few looked terrified when they saw Tyler and Rebecca's faces. Diana stood in the center of the group, still in her jeans and sneakers, still carrying her worn leather purse. But now everyone knew exactly who she was. Good evening, everyone, Diana began, her voice carrying clearly across the space. I'm Diana Williams, and I own this hotel. I own all the Grandview hotels. Some of the newer employees looked shocked. Others nodded nervously. I came here tonight as a guest, Diana continued. I wanted to see how my hotel operates when I'm not expected. I wanted to see how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. She paused, letting that sink in. What I discovered tonight was deeply disappointing. 2 of your colleagues refused to provide me service because of how I looked. They assumed I couldn't afford to stay here. They made jokes about my appearance. They suggested I go to a budget motel instead. Tyler was staring at the floor, his face red with shame. Rebecca was crying quietly. But here's what concerns me. Even more, Diana said. This didn't happen because Tyler and Rebecca are bad people. It happened because somewhere along the way they learned that it was acceptable to judge people based on their appearance. They learned that some people deserve respect and others don't. She looked around at all the faces watching her. So I need to know, where did they learn that? Is this how we train people at Grandview hotels? Is this the culture we've created? Ms. Chen stepped forward. Ms. Williams, I can assure you that this is not representative of our training or our values. We have strict policies. Do we? Diana interrupted. Because Tyler seemed very confident about corporate policy. He seemed to believe that discrimination was not only acceptable but expected. She turned to address the entire group. Let me be very clear about what Grandview Hotel stands for. We serve everyone. Everyone. Regardless of how they're dressed, what color their skin is, how much money we think they have, or anything else. A guest is a guest, period. She paused again, looking directly at Tyler. Tyler, Rebecca, you're both terminated, effective immediately. Pack up your belongings and leave tonight. Tyler's head snapped up. Ms. Williams, please, I need this job. I have student loans, I have rent. You should have thought about that before you decided to humiliate a guest in front of everyone, Diana said firmly. Your actions tonight were recorded by multiple people. By tomorrow, this story will be all over social media. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? Rebecca was sobbing now. Please, Ms. Williams, I'm sorry. I was just following Tyler's lead. I didn't know what to do. Diana felt a flicker of sympathy for Rebecca, but she pushed it aside. Rebecca, you're a manager. Part of your job is knowing what to do when discrimination happens. You not only failed to stop it, you participated in it. She turned to address the group again. Effective immediately, every employee at every Grandview hotel will undergo mandatory diversity and inclusion training. We will also be implementing a new policy. I will be making unannounced visits to all our properties dressed as a regular guest. If I experience discrimination at any of our hotels, there will be immediate terminations. Some of the employees nodded approvingly. Others looked nervous. Robert, Diana called out to the security guard. Please step forward. Robert approached hesitantly, clearly worried about what was coming. Robert, you were asked to escort me out of this lobby tonight. What went through your mind when you got that request? Robert was quiet for a moment. Honestly, Ms. Williams, I knew it was wrong. I could see what was happening and I knew it wasn't right. But you were going to do it anyway? Robert nodded sadly. I have a family to support. I couldn't afford to lose my job. Diana nodded understandingly. I appreciate your honesty, Robert. And I understand the difficult position you were put in. That's exactly why we need to change the culture here. She turned to Mr. Rodriguez. Carlos, I want you to work with human resources to develop a new policy. Any employee who witnesses discrimination and fails to report it will face disciplinary action. But any employee who reports discrimination will be protected even if they're reporting on their supervisor. Mr. Rodriguez nodded quickly. Absolutely, Ms. Williams. We'll have that policy in place within the week. Diana looked around at the guests who were still watching. Many of them were still recording with their phones. To our guests who witnessed, what happened tonight, I sincerely apologize. This is not who we are and it's not who we're going to be. Your bills for tonight are on the house and you're all invited to return as my personal guests anytime you'd like. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who had spoken up earlier, stepped forward. Ms. Williams, I just want to say that I've been traveling for 70 years, and I've never seen a hotel owner handle a situation with such grace and strength. You should be proud of yourself. Diana smiled, feeling tears prick at her eyes. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. That means more to me than you know. She turned back to the staff. I started this company 18 years ago with one small hotel. I was a single mother working 2 jobs, and I knew what it felt like to be looked down on. I promised myself that if I ever had the power to change things, I would. She looked around at all the faces watching her. Today, you saw that power in action. But real change doesn't happen because of one dramatic moment. It happens because of the choices we make every single day. The choice to treat people with dignity. The choice to speak up when we see something wrong. The choice to remember that everyone deserves respect. Diana paused, feeling the weight of the moment. I'm going up to my room now. Ms. Chen, please, handle Tyler and Rebecca's departure. Mr. Rodriguez, I want a full report on my desk about what changes we're implementing company-wide. As Diana walked toward the elevator, the crowd began to disperse. Employees went back to their duties with a lot more to think about than they'd had an hour ago. Guests returned to their evening plans, but Diana knew they'd be talking about what they'd witnessed for a long time. Just before the elevator doors closed, Diana heard Mrs. Patterson call out to her. Ms. Williams, you're going to change everything, aren't you? Diana smiled as the doors closed. I'm sure going to try. As the elevator carried her up to the penthouse suite she had fought so hard to book, Diana thought about the young woman she had been 18 years ago. That woman could never have imagined she would one day own a chain of luxury hotels. She certainly couldn't have imagined she would use that power to fight discrimination. But tonight had reminded Diana why she had started this company in the first place. It wasn't just about building a successful business. It was about creating spaces where everyone felt welcome, where everyone was treated with dignity, where no one had to experience what she had experienced as a young woman trying to make her way in the world. When Diana reached her suite, she kicked off her sneakers and sat down on the expensive sofa. She pulled out her phone and saw that she already had dozens of notifications. Videos of the night's events were already spreading across social media. Some of the comments made her angry. Some made her sad. But many of them gave her hope. People were sharing their own stories of discrimination, their own experiences of being judged unfairly. They were talking about change, about standing up for what's right, about the power of treating everyone with respect. Diana realized that tonight's events would reach far beyond her hotel chain. The videos would be seen by millions of people, The story would be told and retold, and maybe, just maybe, it would inspire other people to make changes in their own businesses, their own communities, their own lives. She thought about Tyler and Rebecca, who were probably packing their belongings right now. She felt sorry for them, but she didn't regret her decision. Sometimes consequences were the only way people learned. She thought about Robert, who had been caught between doing what was right and protecting his job. Tomorrow she would make sure he knew that speaking up for what's right would always be protected at Grandview hotels. She thought about Ms. Chen, who had ultimately done the right thing, but only after the situation had escalated far beyond what it should have. There would be more training, more conversations, more opportunities to learn and grow. Most of all, Diana thought about all the people who had watched tonight's events unfold. The guests who had seen discrimination challenged and defeated. The employees who had learned that their actions mattered, that their choices had consequences, that treating people with dignity wasn't just the right thing to do, it was the only thing to do. As Diana finally settled into bed in the penthouse suite she had fought so hard to book, she smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to make a difference. But tonight, she had reminded everyone, including herself, that real change was possible. It just took the courage to stand up and demand it.